Europe only has one TNT manufacturer today. The price we pay if we don't do it is going to be even higher. None of them will be sold in a state of war.
Welcome to The Big Question, the show from Euronews where we address some of the biggest issues on the business agenda. My guest on today's program is Joachim Sjöblom, the CEO and co-founder of Sweden Ballistics, a new Swedish manufacturer of explosives. Joachim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First, your company is planning to set up a manufacturing plant for the explosive TNT in Sweden. So for those of our viewers who might not be so familiar with it, can you first remind us what TNT is and what it's used for?
Absolutely. So TNT is one of the oldest explosives used for military purposes. Trinitrotoluene has several benefits to it. It's relatively unsensitive and safe to handle. The raw materials are easily available, which is essential for this production because the big purpose of why we're doing this is our local resilience and supply chains.
Now we know that explosives, including TNT, are in shortage in Europe. Europe essentially is not producing enough. What role can Sweden Ballistics play in plugging that production gap in Europe, do you think?
So the numbers that are easy to refer to is a public study that was presented by a British research institute back in March 2025. And they stated that Russia can make available 5 million artillery shells per annum. 3.5 is newly produced and roughly 1.5 is from either stockpiles or donations from the Russian allies. The same article presented that the European production capacity, including the UK but excluding the US, is 720,000 shells. So you have a 6x difference on Russian capacity versus European capacity. And the whole NATO philosophy of deterrence is to make sure that both parties have somewhat equal strength to prevent the other from attacking the other. And well, time will tell if this delta continues growing, the risk of a conflict will increase unless we can be on par.
Give us a sense right now of how reliant Europe is on TNT and explosives produced in other parts of the world.
Europe only has one TNT manufacturer today, located in Poland, named Nitrochem, controlled by the Polish state. And they're doing a great job, but they produce far from enough capacity. So if you go one step up in the ammunition production chain, you have a lot of manufacturers of ammunition. So you got BAE in the UK, you got Nexter and KNDS in France, you got Rheinmetall, Nammo, etc. All of these are reliant on explosives, but barely none of them produce their own explosive. So during time of peace, they could rely on Poland to supply them. Now they cannot, and so the vast majority of TNT currently used in Europe is coming outside of NATO countries, in many cases Far East Asia.
What kind of risks does that carry, in your opinion, that there is a reliance on producers outside of Europe?
Countless. So only if we go back to the COVID pandemic, we saw that the UK was producing vaccine, but they were applying an export ban to it. If something would happen in Poland, I am very certain there would be an export ban on TNT. Same goes for the Asian country that is currently exporting. If there will be a conflict, well, in their proximity, there will be an export ban to it. On top of that, in order to transport explosives from Asia, you need to go around the Horn of Africa because the Suez Channel is closed due to the conflict in Yemen and the boats being attacked. So the lead time is more than 2 months if the ship even reaches your port. On top of that, you have the political risk and you have uncertain agendas from the countries that you're buying from.
And you specifically, you're, I understand, hoping to be at full production capacity by around 2027. Give us a sense of what your production capacity could be as Sweden Ballistics and how much of a role you can play in kind of ramping up the amount of explosives that Europe actually produces.
So our environmental permit is for 4,500 metric tons. And one artillery shell holds roughly 10 kilograms per shell. So easily calculated, roughly 450,000 shells. It's far from matching the Russian capacity. We would need 10 of these manufacturing plants to be on par with 5 million shells coming out of Russia, but it's a major contribution.
Now, we know that there's a big push in Europe right now to ramp up investment in defense. We have the Rearm Europe plan, which could release as much as 800 billion euros by 2030. How do you see Sweden Ballistics contributing to this plan? And are you confident that all of these will work and can actually undo decades of underinvestment in this sector?
Well, ready is very hard to define because nobody knows what the world will look like 5 years from now. In terms of the safe funding, it already has a requirement that 65% of the cost of components should be manufactured within Europe. In order to have EU manufactured components, we play a part in that puzzle. The industry is asked to take huge commercial and financial risk to ramp up production, while the actual procurement orders from the armed forces and the member states are not coming in as fast. So I think the risk profile is suboptimal right now. The industry needs to carry a lot of risk, which is a benefit as a new player in the industry because we don't have the same shareholders to cater for, and we don't have the same stock price that we consider on a quarterly basis. My job here is to make sure that we prevent a future conflict, and making short-term profit is not high on my agenda.
Some would say, well, this big push in investment in the defense sector is going to benefit big corporations and entrepreneurs like yourself, but do you think also that the benefits can spill over to the local economy? Will it create more jobs and so on?
100%. So I'm gonna take this number with a pinch of salt, but I read a number that the European member states are spending 200 billion euros every year on defense material. More than 60% of that is purchased from American producers. If those components were to be manufactured in the EU, we would create more than 10 million jobs. So there is a real measurable opportunity, which also comes with the benefit of our improved security.
You say on the website of Sweden Ballistics that the company is dedicated to strengthening NATO's resilience and preventing military conflicts through the production of defensive capabilities, which is something you've explained to us. Some would argue that the idea of an explosives factory is not compatible with the idea of preventing conflicts. How do you see it?
I think we can look at the results of history. So NATO is, 75 years old now, and is the most successful preventive defensive alliance in the history of the world. So no NATO country has been invaded since its creation. So the likelihood of these armaments actually being used, I would say, is quite small. And that's the whole purpose. So the risk of going into a conflict is higher if you have a difference in the production capacity with your aggressor. Another reason why I'm doing this is if you look at the global crises, environment, climate, starvation, none of them will be solved in a state of war. So the fundamentals to addressing climate is to make sure there is no war. Because if there is a war, there will be no resources allocated to solve the big problems. So I see this as kind of a step zero. This needs to be stable to solve the big problems. But my ambition is to repurpose any cash flow that this business generates into further strengthening our resilience and preventing the conflict. So as long as we have a world where there is a conflict in our proximity, I would like to make sure that it stays in our proximity and not at home.
Great. Well, Joachim, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Question.
Thank you for having me.